Hello, everybody. My name is Denise Harlow. I'm the CEO of the National Community Action Partnership, and thank you so much for joining us here today to talk about the partnership's draft strategic plan. We are thrilled to have you with us here today. A few housekeeping issues. We've set up the web meeting, we hope, in a way that you can click the raise your hand button. You'll see a little hand. If at some point you want to be unmuted so you can share your comments with us directly, we'll try to do that feature and have you, and we'll try to unmute you as well. In addition, the chat window is available to you to write chats in real time, and we'll make sure we have folks behind the scenes here keeping an eye on the chat window, and you can ask your questions live that way as well, and we can incorporate them into the conversation. We are recording today's session, just to let you know that as well, and so we can put that out to the membership as well and let everyone have a chance to see an update about our planning process. So we had a listening session yesterday. We had a listening session back at CapLaw. So what you're seeing today is really our draft plan. The Partnerships Board has been hard at work over the last 7 months or so, and what we want to walk you through is the process as well as some of our key outcomes or outputs. I'm not sure which category at the moment they fit into, and really try to get your feedback. So let's go to the next slide. So we did have a planning committee, which was a subset of the Partnerships Board. We think it's a good representation of officers that are elected by the full membership, as well as regional reps, which are, of course, elected by individual regions. We have Amy Turner, who is our committee chair. She's the Region 2 rep from New York. Brian Duncan is our board chair. He is from North Carolina. Peter Kildee is also our second vice chair. He is from Wisconsin. Delissa Sulamoyo is our board secretary, and he's from Illinois. And my slides are right above you here, so if you see my eyes moving, that's why. Steve Geller from Region 1, he's from Vermont. We also have Joe Devaney from Ohio, Region 5 rep. We have Paul Dole, who's our Region 4 rep from Kentucky, and then myself, Denise Harlow. We had a number of our key staff sit on the committee as well and provided input as we went forward. Our consultant for this project was Whipfleet. Many of you know Whipfleet, certainly from their financial work, and we've engaged with several of their team to be our consultants and facilitators for this process. We've been going through this process over the last 7 months or so. As many of you who've sat in my strategic planning trainings, we often talk about you don't want your planning processes to go on too long. We were not interested in doing an 18-month-long process, so we really tried keeping it concise and focused. It took a lot of energy and focus from the board to stay on track, a lot of extra meetings, and a lot of pieces going back and forth. Many of you participated in our network survey earlier this year, and I will say we also looked back to the survey we did in the fall, which was a membership satisfaction survey. We had a higher response rate to that than we did actually our strategic planning piece, so we were able to garner the information from both of those sources. The third, no, let's go back to the other slide, please. The third piece was key informant interviews. We made sure we talked with national folks, state level folks, a variety of people to really help us clue into what we needed to hear from an individual conversation perspective. We also did focus groups with folks where we did focus groups at our winter conference. We did focus groups at the NCAP conference to try to get sets of EDs and non-ED state associations and CAP folks together to talk and dialogue about where they thought the partnership should be heading. We did a board and staff survey as well. We did a board and staff retreat back in March where the board really did a deep dive into mission, vision, values, and some key strategic themes from which we want to go forward. We did a feedback session, like I said, back at CapLaw's conference in June. We had a few folks, and then we did a listening session online yesterday, and we are doing one today. And then the board committee is meeting this Thursday, so your real-time input will be critically important so we can give that to them for Thursday's meeting. We're going to send you a survey later today. It's a SurveyMonkey link, and we ask that you do complete it pretty quick so we can get the data to the committee on Thursday. You can do it afterwards, but it would probably have less of an impact because the August meeting will really be to finalize and solidify the plans going forward. So that's been our process. And you'll see here, I think the next slide is a geographical representation of our process. We really are in that kind of second to last box of network-wide feedback, draft reports, trying a few things out, hearing from the network on how things are going. So that's where we stand in our process. I'll also put out there, let's go to the, yep, that we are incorporating the elements. The Partnerships Board invested in a strategic communications plan last year. We used a firm called Springboard Partners here in Washington, D.C. We're still working with them on our communications efforts. They've been a great organization to work with, and they developed us some new framing messages. But they also did a significant amount of data collection during their process. So you'll see as we look at our strategic direction areas that we've incorporated some of the language they've given us in terms of how to frame the need across the country and how we respond as the Community Action Network. So we're hoping to blend both of these investments into a product that will help both the partnership move forward and help the network be able to garner what you find helpful for your own local organization or state association. All right, so, and again, we weren't looking for an overly complex process. We were not interested in cascading this or multiples that. We really wanted to really just drill to the core basics. Strategic plans don't have a long shelf life nowadays with the dynamic funding environment, political environment, the changing in regulatory rules, all these sorts of things are coming a mile a minute. So we weren't looking for a 10-year vision. We really wanted to nail down something very tangible for the partnership. So the first tackle was certainly on the mission statement. We had a mission statement, but we pretty much used the Community Action Promise as our key descriptor of community action. And we thought it was time to really reflect and ground ourselves again in our mission statement, which I know many of you do as well when you do your planning process. So we're proposing that our mission statement be to assure the issues of poverty are effectively addressed and to strengthen, promote, represent, and serve the Community Action Network. A couple of changes. The previous mission statement had the issues flipped. Serve the members actually of the Community Action Partnership and assure the issues of poverty addressed. The board thought it was important to start with poverty, start with the big mission. The whole reason we're in business is to help strengthen you guys and give you the tools and resources that you can then use to be effective anti-poverty fighters in your community. So let's start with the end outcome to impact poverty. And then also, we're a membership association, and we're thrilled we have record membership this year, so thank you for that. And we certainly have a focus on members and the number of the pieces we do, but we also serve the broader network, whether that's state CSBG offices, the national partners, the foundation community. OCS is certainly a partner in a lot of the work we do. So it's more than the members, it's the entire Community Action Network. So those are kind of the pieces there. So I'm going to pause, check our chat window to see if there's any comments so far that's come in on our mission statement. And again, we'll be sending you out a survey that will ask you about mission, vision, values, and each of our strategic goal areas as well. So comments come in. I appreciate seeing the word poverty in the mission draft, and I love the simplicity of the statement. Very nice. Thank you so much. Appreciate that feedback. Good to hear. Sounds like, at least from that respondent, we are partially on the right track, and some of the early surveys we got back from yesterday's listening session people seemed pleased with that direction as well. Okay, I'm just going to pause. We didn't see any hands up, right? Nope. All right, so the next piece now, I prefaced my last comments with we wanted to be well-grounded. The vision statement, the partnership, again, really didn't have a typical vision statement. Again, we use the promise for a lot of different things, and we're not changing the promise. We believe strongly in the promise, and the promise serves us well, both at the national level, I think state associations, local agencies, state offices, national partners. But the board thought it was important for us to have a vision. And again, those of you who've been in my planning session trainings, we talk about, do you have a vision for the organization, or do you have a vision for your community? And the board went back and forth. And the initial draft that the board looked at their meeting in June actually was more focused on agency-level vision statement. But after a lot of dialogue and negotiations back and forth on different pieces of the plan, we reflected back on the vision statement and decided to go with a more broad, what we thought was a powerful vision statement. I tell you though, as staff, it's a bit scary because our vision is a nation that creates opportunities for all people to thrive, builds strong, resilient communities, and ensures a more equitable society. Now, passionate about that, that's everything that I believe in, but we're not, it's going to be hard. We can't certainly do this alone, and none of our work is done alone, but the board really wants to set, that's our eye on the horizon. We really want everyone to be able to thrive, and it's about providing those opportunities. That's what community action is all about, the opportunities. We want to build strong, resilient communities. It's both family-level work and community-level work, and a more equitable society. You're going to see the whole racial equity piece where the partnership has been focusing a lot of efforts and making sure it's embedded in a lot of our different pieces reflected, and I hope that you see it reflected here. So I'm going to pause again. I'm going to check the chat window to see what's come in around the vision statement, and again, you will get copies of these slides along with your survey, so you'll be able to lay them side by side when you respond to the survey. Comments come in saying, great vision statement, bravo, so that's great, we'll take that, always good to hear positive stuff. I know, again, the early survey respondents seemed positive about it as well. There's always the debate, do you do it for the agency or do you do it for your community? So I think we're gonna have to take a look at that as well, but my guess is we'll end up here as well. So are there more vision statements? A beautiful vision, it's okay, let's see. Is this vision for the short term? Boy, no, right? It's a long-term vision. What I think it's, the way I'm kind of absorbing this big vision, we talk at the Partnerships Board meeting about all these different things we're doing. You know, we got our strategic impact statement that we're doing with Springboard. We got training in TA going on. We're doing stuff with our Pathways program. We're doing stuff with Roma Next Gen coming in the door. We're revamping some of our email communications, and it's like, well, these are a lot of scattered things, Denise. How are you keeping them straight? And for me, that vision is kind of that touch point. Is everything we're doing finding a lane into helping people thrive, helping you as agencies giving families the chance to thrive, tools and resources? Are we building resilient communities, and are we grounded in equity? So it is much more of a long-term vision for us, but I think it plays in with everything that we do every day. Comments comes in, we like the language, more equitable society. When I'm reading it and thinking grammatically, how does build strong and resilient communities and ensure sound? You're not being too picky. I think it was on our mission statement, all of a sudden we ended up with semicolons, and that drives me a little crazy. So grammar is going to be important. So if it sounds to you a little tricky, we'll definitely take a look at it. This aligns strongly with what research says about emotional trauma and the need for resilience building strategies for communities. Great job. Good, thank you. All right. We have two computers going, so I'm looking at chats in various places. And we're gonna grab these and copy these, and we can put them into a Word document so the board definitely sees these comments as well. Okay. All right, so values. The partnership, again, the promise really served that value statement for us in a lot of different ways, and we're not going away from the promise, we're not changing it. I love the promise. If I could put it, I need to put it on a t-shirt and wear it pretty consistently, or put it on a pin. I just think it really resonates with what we do. But we thought it was important to really create some more tangible value statements. I think we have a lot of ways we can use these. I'm hoping that local agencies and state associations, state offices might find ways to use these values and value statements in your work as well. So the first piece, you'll see that blue box over on the left-hand side. The board initially came up with, these are the core values that we believe in: equity, respect, commitment, excellence, hope, caring, innovation, and opportunity. And I will say the board actually a year and a half ago did an exercise where they looked at values, and a number of these are what popped up then as well as now. So I think they're grounded, and the board comes from the membership. It's all CAP directors, they're coming out from the network. So they're grounded in what you do every day. So, but the board said that's a lot. That's a 9, what is it, 9, I think, on the list. What can we do to frame up some core statements? So we tweaked it, and the committee came up with, we believe all people should be treated with dignity and respect, and recognize that structural race and gender inequities remain barriers that must be addressed. Number 2, we are committed to helping others find hope and opportunity and achieve success. We believe that with adequate resources and opportunities, all people can achieve success. We don't define success. Success might really mean stability for a number of folks. And finally, we pledge ourselves to creating an environment that pursues innovation and excellence through multi-sector partnership and collaboration, 2 distinct pieces. We partner in a lot of different ways. Collaboration, though, is a deeper relationship with other partners, so we do it both ways. Some of the feedback we have heard already is that concept of others. We want to make sure we stay away from the othering issue. We want to make sure we're talking about everyone, all of us, so there might be some tweaking there as well. So I'm going to pause here, and you'll see that blue box at the very top. That's some of the language that Springboard has given us that kind of reflects where America sits, kind of our take on things, and kind of our needs statement. And you'll see those boxes as we go through some of our core strategic areas. So, where does the board and leadership see the values of local control and maximum feasible participation fit in here? I think that's an excellent question. It is definitely grounded in our thoughts and hopefully our needs as well. I would think that I would see it primarily in that first part of the first bullet. We believe all should be treated with dignity and respect. For me, maximum feasible participation means that people who are living and who are struggling in our communities have every right to decide for themselves where they're headed, what success means to them. And they have a right to be engaged in the conversations about how resources are dispersed in their community. And so having a true governance seat on a board, for me, is that way that they embody the Economic Opportunity Act around our mission, our job is to rally all community resources to fight the causes and conditions of poverty. So I hear you on that. I think that's something we can definitely feed back to the board. Does there need to be a place here where we're talking about some of those core elements that in the language that we use? So that's really good feedback. I would like to hear more about what you mean by excellence. Is that a word? That is a word I do not feel very comfortable with, and would like to hear more about how it was chosen. Great question. And honestly, interestingly enough, on the first list of value statements that were selected, it wasn't necessarily on that list, honestly, giving you a peek behind the curtain a little bit. But as we dialogued about our work, the term excellence got to our training and technical assistance. We want to be charged with the staff and his board as the organization that we believe in providing high quality and moving agencies toward excellence. Now, the org standards, right, we know that's those core capacities of agency capacity. But if you look at our Pathways to Excellence program or the Excellence Award, it's a continuum of performance. And we always want to be striving toward excellence and helping our agencies achieve excellence and helping the partnership focus on high quality, excellent performance. So that's kind of where that came from. So love to hear more. If you want to put that into your survey or shoot me an email, more thoughts on that, happy to listen and put that back into the board conversation. So thank you for that question. Any other questions, comments come in? Let's see. Lifting up poverty in the value statement. I feel it's a bit lost also when discussing structural race and gender inequities. What's important, should there be a statement about generational poverty, also being a barrier, along with systems deficits, which also must be addressed. And the preface of that, I don't see lifting up poverty in the value statements. Good point. We'll definitely put those comments in front of the board, and it is, and that came also on the last one. Race and gender are certainly inequality or inequity issues that we want to be focused on, but there are a lot of other discriminatory factors in our community that we don't want to necessarily set aside and see as less important. So we'll have to figure out how we address that. So thank you for raising that. I think that's a good point to raise. I like the inclusiveness and the reference to how persons may be experiencing a short or long-term setback. as it reflects upon the diverse stories that relate to others. It might help to do a statement for each of the points. That could be as well. You could see this document being fleshed out in a variety of ways. I think that's an interesting comment, so thank you, and we can definitely put that into the mix. Someone suggested perhaps saying, instead of just race and gender, say race, gender, and economic inequities still exist. So that's an interesting way to frame that as well. Back up to the top, let's see. Success is a broad concept, but rather focus on the value that's what success leads to. Okay, may need a little bit more information there. I'll come back, and there's another statement here. In the first bullet, can you explain structural? I understand race and gender inequities, but I'm not sure where you're going with the word structural. We believe from a staff, and I know the board's been talking a lot about this, is that racial discrimination and gender discrimination isn't something that is necessarily, it's certainly individual people are victims of, as well as act in a way that may be discriminatory. But coming from the perspective that structurally our society is built from the ground up, whether it's stemming from even within the last, what's been going on in terms of structural housing locations, voting issues that are implemented to deny people their right to vote. Sometimes I think about even the CSBG Act, when we look at some of the barriers there about not being able to use CSBG or CSBG facilities to register people to vote. That's a structural issue that's built into not register people to express their vote. Whether it's police, law enforcement, whether it's, again, I go back to housing and education and health systems. It's all about systems. It's not so, it is also about the individual, but structural really gets that. We believe that it goes deeper than the individual. It is built into the sauce in terms of racial and gender inequities, and beyond even racial and gender inequities, that it's really built into the sauce. So that may have been an inarticulate response to that question, but that's coming from an immediate response to the question, so I hope that that was helpful. Do we want to talk about the regulatory, legal, economic environment, how government can contribute to inequities and opportunities? And I think some of that actually gets to the structural piece as well, so I think that that is helpful. Again, that other comment was, what can we do to expand on some of these statements and add additional comments to that? I think that might be a spot for that as well. Would structural inequities cover race, gender, generational poverty, ability, cultural, etc. bias? It may hit some of that. I'm not sure if it may. We'll have to kind of go back and reflect, I think, on that. These are great points to really bring back to the committee. So we'll have to do a deeper dive into that, so thank you. And we're going to make sure to copy both of these sets of questions, right, and make sure we don't lose these. I think you could revise the fourth bullet to point to through maximum feasible participation and multi-sector partnership. That's an interesting way to maybe put in the term maximum feasible participation. And a little more clarification from someone is structural is somewhat like systemic or systemic in your statement, or is structural like systemic, I keep wanting to say systematic, but systemic. In many ways, I think it does get to systems, and so I think I'd have to make sure that I'm using those words in a synonymous way, so we'll have to get out our thesaurus in a way to see if we can use those two words interchangeably. I'm guessing there's going to be a bit of a difference, some nuances between systematic or systemic and structural in terms of how things happen versus what's really built into the framework. That's a good question for more of a construction frame for that as well. So good question, way to push us to think about those things. One thought is to consider that the use of the term all people in the vision statement may dilute our mandate and emphasis on impacting the lives of people with low incomes. And I like that you said people with low incomes, right? Not low income people, they're people first. Perhaps we may consider a nation that effectively creates opportunities for people with low incomes to thrive, builds strong, resilient communities, and ensures a more equitable society. We can definitely put that into the sauce, so thank you. it's a good kind of tweak in that space. It is interesting, right? So going back to the mission and purpose of working with families with low incomes, working in communities that are disenfranchised, struggling communities. Yeah, I think that's helpful. Thank you. What else has come in? Those were great. Thank you. I think we hit everything? All right. Okay. Let's go to the next slide. And again, we're going to get this all out to you so you can have it with you when you're looking at the survey. Yeah, there are a lot of words on this slide. We thought about editing some of these slides, but this is how it went to the board, so we didn't want to tweak it too much. So there are a variety of pieces on these upcoming slides. The top bar, this one has it in orange. That's the needs statement from our Springboard partner folks on the comms side. The blue box also comes from our comms report that kind of ties in. I was trying to grab language so you could kind of see how the language we're beginning to use fits in within our targeted areas. But we're not meaning to get it too confused. So those diamonds on the left, those are our core elements of our strategic plan. So the blue diamond is talking about training in TA. The red diamond is going to be talking about local advocacy, local community level work, and the green bullet is going to be more around policy and advocacy work. So that orange piece, corporate capacity, you're going to see corporate capacity in each of these three big diamond areas, and that's really geared toward what does the partnership need to do to ramp up our skill sets? Are we doing the right staff development? When we need to bring in new staff, are we hiring the right skill sets? Usually when agencies are doing strategic plans, right, you usually have a capacity building component. It's not just all about programs, it's not just about community level work, it is also about agency integrity, agency capacity building. So you'll see that throughout. So let's go to the first one. The first one is around training in TA, and again, that's what people are going to know us for primarily. Yes, go to the next slide, yes. So again, the need statements. We firmly believe that community action agencies have the expertise and dedication it takes to serve families and communities best. You're going coast to coast, there's no one better. And in some places of the country, you're it. You're all there is in some communities. And your partnership and collaboration with other entities, faith-based, community-based, education, business, all sectors of the community working together. But agencies need access to information. One of the feedback pieces we got in our strategic plan survey was the value we get through membership for a lot of the free TA that we do. A lot of most of our webinars, I think all of our webinars right now are free and open to anybody. Our conferences, we try to keep them, we're very conscious of cost, whether it's overnight room rates, registration fees. But we want to make sure we're providing to you the best possible data and information and skills and training from the most relevant experts that we can find. So our goal here is to optimize the impact of our training and technical assistance. And you can see in the three sub boxes on the left-hand side, we want to lead response to emerging trends. We know many of you have been engaged in our Learning Communities Resource Center work, funded by OCS, CSBG training, and TA. That work has really allowed us to garner the knowledge of the think tanks, the researchers, the key evidence-based practices, and convey that out to members. And so there's no charge to local agencies to participate in our webinar Wednesdays, for instance. To engage in the learning community piece, there's cost on your side in terms of staff engagement, but we want to do more of that. We really want to embody adult learning. And some of that may be enhancing what we do online in terms of our Community Action Academy concept. We may want to be doing something different with our winter conference. We're talking about learning teams in a learning environment that really ramps it up. So we really want to optimize and being on the cutting edge of quality training in TA, both on governance, finance, HR, agency infrastructure, org standards, but also on what are the best strategies to fight poverty. The second bullet is leveraging existing high-impact training in TA. We have a variety of platforms that we touch on, that we use in certain spaces. In our website, we've shifted now to a new platform which will enhance the search feature and other pieces. What can we do to really leverage our existing stuff and make it better? do a deeper dive, make it easier to use, and use technology in more effective ways. We want to strengthen our engagement, that's on the lower left. We want to make sure we're working closely with our state association colleagues, with OCS, with our national partners to make sure we're leveraging and strengthening our engagement at all levels. And then corporate capacity. Do we have the right skill sets? Where do we need to go to get training to make sure we're conveying the right information? So when we're talking about our 2-gen work, that we know Ann Mosley's coming to our conference in September, that Rosa Maria Castaneda from Casey Foundation is coming to our conference. We're making sure that we strengthen our engagements. We bring you the best quality training in TA that we can. I'm going to pause on this one and see what the comments or questions are on our training in TA. Now, you won't see on our plan a list of 15 to 20 individual actions. The board has kind of conveyed to staff they want us to kind of do the operational side of the plan, and we'll be certainly conveying that to them, and we'll see what we can do to try to get that information out as well as it kind of comes together. But again, this is all about, this is where we're headed. Everything we need to do, everything we're doing needs to fit into these lanes. So a comment. Consider families and communities best to learn from other innovative efforts and stay up to date on latest standards and concepts. I'm sorry? An edit to the top needs statement. Okay, thank you. Consider families and communities best. We need to learn from other innovative efforts and stay up to date on latest standards and concepts, right? Community action agencies need information, training, and TA, right? So it's an awkward pairing of how we want to convey ourselves to external audiences and now trying to do it with our own internal audiences, so thank you for framing that. Someone said they like the middle blue box language. The partnership commits to meeting the current and future needs of the membership through training and technical assistance, right? So that comes from our Whitley colleagues and our facilitation piece, so that, yeah, you're right, that's very tangible to our plan, so that's kind of our hook. All right, is that those comments? All right, we're gonna move on to the red box. Now, this is called Strengthen Local Advocacy. This is a combination of community-level work as well as helping agencies talk about the value and impact of their work, which I believe ties right to advocacy, right? So here you're going to see, I can't even read that slide, localized capacity building, making sure that agencies get the best, that you increase your capacity to take your data, analyze your data, frame your data, to tell your story, and to frame up your impact in your local communities. That there's a commitment to data-driven storytelling. We know many of you do a great job telling the story of families who are achieving success through your local agencies or with your agency's assistance. What can we do to help assist in that space? What can we do to help enhance the community action brand? And again, there's no effort here to tell agencies you got to change your name, or you got to use the logo, the huggy heart. That we are asking agencies, however, to formally put on websites and materials, if you are so inclined. We are a member of the Community Action Partnership or a member of the Community Action Network. If you don't want the membership partnership, you can say a member of the Community Action Network. What can we do to help agencies who do want to use the national branding in ways that are creative? Color schemes, ways to use the huggy heart in creative ways. There's some really cool things going on across the networks. Not that you use our logo, but are there ways that we can tie in to make sure the nation knows there are 1,000 agencies across this country that are connected to one another? And so we use the term local advocacy, that we're really trying to be we're committed to defining the narrative on and telling the story of community action. So I'm going to pause here and see if there are questions. Okay. Strengthening local advocacy is a great focus for the partnership. Great, good. We're going to be able to help agencies tell their story and give you tools and resources that will help with that. Great. Liking the blue box on the previous slide, good to note, thank you. We would like to see more agencies using the national brand. Can't say I disagree with that statement, but totally understand that agencies need to do what's right for their own local agency, but if you could throw a huggy heart on things or put on the bottom of your website that you're a member of the Community Action Network, that would be fantastic, and anything we can do to be helpful there. Fantastic. Okay, let's go on to the next one. The, The next one is more focused on advocacy. It is growing national advocacy, and we are, just like you are, so thankful that David Bradley is carrying the flag on the Hill when it comes to CSBG and weatherization. We support David's effort, and we have no interest in stepping into that space. That is David's space, being on the Hill, advocating and lobbying for CSBG, weatherization, those programs. And actually, he does a lot of work on the Hill, just talking about the value and impact of community action. Big piece of his job when he's knocking on all those doors is saying, let me tell you about this network. So we love having David over at NCAF. We're talking about some other policy issues. We know that community action does much more than CSBG and weatherization, and we're very careful that whatever advocacy roles we take is not going to impact negatively David's work on CSBG and weatherization. But what we really want to think about doing, how do we make sure that we're informing the network about policy issues, whether it's around housing, whether it's around energy, whether it's around nutrition, whether it's around education, secondary education, workforce. There are a lot of places here where we need to ramp up our policy level advocacy work, and advocacy both with the network and also being engaged with other national organizations who deal with these policy issues. So what can we do to make sure we're prepared to offer a public policy response on behalf of community action when we look at things such as the Farm Bill, or we're looking at housing cuts at HUD, or are there ways that we can work with HUD to bring in housing dollars focusing community action? I think that advocacy piece can go both ways. There is strengthening and forming partnerships and alliances. We're already kind of working on that. We're meeting with new partners every day, talking up community action, trying to figure out where those leverage points are. And you see that diversifying our funding model and also corporate capacity. Right now, our primary funding streams are membership dues, so thank you, thank you, thank you. A bit of a profit margin on the conference, not that much because we don't have a lot of corporate sponsors like a lot of other national organizations do, but it is our calling card, and we do make a little bit on that. We have our TNTA grants through OCS, the CSBG training in TA. So we really need to figure out how we diversify our funding model to make sure we have resources to bring in staff who can focus on public policy. And right now we have a portion of an FTE that's not quite enough, I would argue. So we have to find ways to diversify our funding model. I will also say Amy Casey right now is investing, and we're exploring other ways to work with other national foundations to expand our funding base, or at least diversify it, even if it isn't going to necessarily grow. So here, the partnership is committed to building relationships at all levels, and the partnership recognizes an emerging lead to prepare a response to leadership changes. We know that there's an election in a few months in November. There's a presidential election in 2 years. So there's constant change. What can we do to make sure we're reflective and responsive to leadership changes at all levels? So we want to make sure that those dialogues are happening sooner rather than later, and that we stay abreast and nimble as an organization. So let's look at some of the questions that have come in this space. Comment. We need to broaden our advocacy efforts. So bravo, so great, fantastic. I prefer national best practices to federal standards. Good to know. We'll put that into the mix as well. Love the top statement in green. Not sure the middle green box fits with this advocacy focus. Feel more like training in TA unless we get more specific about leadership changes or other challenges, right? So the community action agencies are the nation's eyes and ears about what's getting in the way of family economic stability. That's just it. You guys know what's going on. So the reason David is effective on the Hill is because you have the relationship with your congressional members that you're able to convey those stories. So good feedback. Thank you. Comment. Enhancing the capacity of our network members to engage in local and advocacy is such a great activity of the partnership. Our state has sometimes found that CAP leaders are not, community action leaders aren't always prepared to meet with legislators, and there's a bit of discomfort, and I get that. I tell you, my voice still shakes if I'm picking up the phone or writing a letter or doing a visit or something. That stuff is nerve-wracking. So what can we do to help make folks feel more comfortable? I know at our conference at Capwell we did a role-play exercise on helping people say those things out loud and make the ask. So whatever we can do to be supportive there. So more support from the partnership and helping local community action agency people feel more confident in some of that legislative asks. Certainly working closely with NCAF on that, so thank you. Are community action agencies limited in the expanding fundraising prospects? Do CSBG funding discourage corporate fundraising? Well, fundraising is always an interesting, tricky piece. First of all, on the partnership side, we don't want to do fundraising from corporate sponsors that could negatively impact state associations or local agencies. So sometimes state associations have those corporate relationships, and if we were to take money, then those folks would lose out, or even local agencies would lose out. We can't use federal money to do fundraising, just like you guys can't, so we can't use our CSBG funded staff to do fundraising. You can't use your CSBG funded staff to go out and do fundraising, so we have to find ways to do that. Now, we're lucky because we have membership dues, we have conference fees and things like that that don't have some of those strings attached, but it is a challenge to do the right kind of fundraising in a way that doesn't negatively impact local agencies either. So, all right, I think those are all the comments. So, and I'm going to pause here. We are going to get you out a survey today. And we'll get you copies of all the slides as well, so you'll have them in front of you. And we're putting it up in the chat window. It looks right now a link to the survey, and you're going to get an email from me later that will have it as well. We want to know, oh, the link didn't go through. Sorry. Okay. Just never mind. You're going to get an email for it. The board committee meets Thursday. They're going to meet again in August, and then at our membership annual meeting on Wednesday morning at the conference, what is that, August 29th, we will release our strategic plan. And again, you don't see we don't see 48 individual operational components. It's more about really setting the direction that we want to be headed. Excuse me, so I welcome your feedback, your thoughts today. We're going to grab these and put these into a Word document and make sure the board committee sees these as well. So I want to make sure and there's the link to the surveys in the chat window. All right, so appreciate the chance to provide comments, so that's good to hear. So again, you can email me. I'll be with the folks in Ohio tomorrow, as long as my flights move on given the weather tonight. We'll be with others next week around the country up in Minnesota. We're on the road a lot, not even just in May anymore, it seems year-round. So grab us. You also have regional reps on our board. Talk to them. If any questions or concerns, those regional reps represent you. Any of our officers, talk to them, and again, you can always reach out to me. So I'm going to pause, make one more check. I don't see any other comments or questions that have come in the door, so thank you, everyone. I look forward to hearing your perspectives on our mission, vision, values, as well as some of these core directions that we want to be headed. We're doing this in partnership with you, and I hope we are meeting your needs as a network of just fantastic organizations and dedicated people. So thank you for everything that you do every day, and we will see you in August at our conference in Denver. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye-bye.